Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Madam President, for invitation. It's a great honor and pleasure to be back to Strasbourg. Also, I'm very grateful for quoting my speech, which I delivered here 10 years ago. I can only confirm that what I said 10 years ago is our position with respect to reforms and the successful development of Azerbaijan during the years of independence shows that economic and political reforms, if implemented in parallel, lead to success. And of course, we continue our reforms.
May I ask you, President, first of all, I would like to ask the press to leave the room because our members can't see the President in his address. And I would also remind people who have come to listen to you that they are not allowed to express any act of approval or disapproval. So I think I ask the press really also not to hide the view of our parliamentarians. There is still one problem with the camera, I think, that we should arrange. Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting you, President, but as a President of this Assembly, I have to look that everything is being developed as it should. So now you have the floor again.
You quoted me twice, so you can interrupt me also twice at least. So I'm ready for that. So the reforms implemented in Azerbaijan show that when they are implemented in parallel, they can lead to substantial progress. And of course, the years of membership of Azerbaijan in the Council of Europe were the years of a very rapid economic and political transformation. Actually, reforms in Azerbaijan started in the mid-90s, just several years after restoration of our independence. The first years of independence were marked with enormous complications and tragedy for our people. First of all, the social unrest, economic complications, difficulties, political, economic, and military crisis, inefficient government of the previous leadership of Azerbaijan. All that led to a very serious situation where even our statehood was put under question. As a result of this situation, we had civil war in Azerbaijan in 1993, which was the most tragic part of our modern history. So reforms started in mid-90s. The new democratic constitution of Azerbaijan was adopted, and economic and political reforms are being conducted, as I said, in parallel, and lead to a substantial progress our country achieved during the years of independence. Joining the Council of Europe was our conscious choice because we wanted to be a member of this institution, we wanted to deepen the reforms, and of course, we knew that joining to the Council of Europe will also imply commitments, and we are ready for these commitments, and so far we implement commitments and obligations. As Madam President said, we joined almost 60 conventions. We upgraded our legislation, and the reforms which we implement today create a very positive atmosphere in our society. With respect to fundamental freedoms, all the fundamental freedoms are provided in Azerbaijan. Freedom of political activity, we have hundreds of political institutions, political parties, freedom of expression, freedom of media, we have media freedom, and more than 40 daily and almost 200 weekly and monthly newspapers, 9 countrywide TV channels, 14 regional and 14 cable TV channels. We have free internet, and the number of users of internet in Azerbaijan is more than 70%. And our government is implementing now a very large investment demanding project of broadband internet to every city and to every village. In other words, having free internet and no censorship, we cannot restrict media freedom. On the contrary, we're in favor of media freedom because media freedom means democracy. It helps the government to concentrate on shortcomings. It creates a necessary link between the government and society. And this is one of the biggest assets of Azerbaijan, of modern Azerbaijan, and we are proud of that. Therefore, can say once again, media freedom is fully provided. Freedom of association and assembly also is fully provided, and political institutions take advantage of that and from time to time had rallies which are held in a peaceful atmosphere, which also shows our commitment to reforms. I'd like to say that implementation of reforms for us is a priority not because we need to implement commitments or to get some positive assessment from international institutions. That's because we are modernizing our country. And as I said 10 years ago, without strong democratic institutions, our economic success cannot be sustainable. Therefore, economic and political reforms in parallel, democratization of society, create now a positive atmosphere in our society. We have religious freedoms, which is also biggest assets of our country. We are multi-ethnic and multi-religious society for centuries. Representatives of different nationalities and religions lived in peace and dignity in Azerbaijan, and values of multiculturalism is one of the priorities which we also will concentrate during our chairmanship. Azerbaijan was the initiator of Baku process, which started in 2008, where the session of the Ministers of Culture of Council of Europe countries, we invited Ministers of Culture of the countries of Islamic Cooperation Organization. That was for the first time in the history, representatives of two important international institutions got together in Baku. The next day, 2009, was vice versa. We invited ministers from countries of Council of Europe to participate at Islamic Conference Summit in Baku. Therefore, multiculturalism is one of the advantages and big assets, and we definitely will concentrate on that during our chairmanship because there is a big need for that. We see, unfortunately, in different parts of the world, in our neighborhood, in Middle East, in Europe, the tendencies which are creating certain concerns. The tendencies of alienation, separation, and sometimes hatred. We need to address this issue because we live in the world in order to contribute, to create a better world, a world for everyone, for all the people of all the religions, regardless of the level of their living standards, to live in dignity and peace. Therefore, tensions based on religious sentiments are very dangerous for every country, including country with a national component of its society. Among other priorities, we will concentrate on the implementation of resolutions and decisions of international organizations. Because as far as we are concerned, several important resolutions and decisions of United Nations Security Council, Council of Europe, Parliamentary Assembly, European Parliament, OSCE were adopted with regard to conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but none of them was implemented. Therefore, there should be a mechanism of implementation of resolutions adopted by prominent international institutions. And this mechanism must be elaborated by all of us. Otherwise, these resolutions lose their substance. We will strongly advocate for superiority of the norms and principles of international law, and I'm very grateful to Madam President for her comments in her introductory remarks with respect to territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. which is a fundamental principle of international law, and the main principle which must be observed in resolution of the protracted conflicts. Yesterday, our minister addressing the Assembly also elaborated on other priorities, therefore I will not go into much details, just to name them. Fight against corruption will be one of our priorities. I think that Azerbaijan has unique experience in this area because, unfortunately, all the former republics of the Soviet Union have the same problem. This legacy of corruption seriously damages the successful development of our country. Therefore, in Azerbaijan, we implement numerous measures, including administrative and also institutional reforms, in order to combat corruption with great success. And one of them was relatively newly established the public services program, which exists for 1.5 years, and already almost 2 million people applied to these centers and got necessary documents, and this seriously influenced the reduction of corruption in Azerbaijan. Therefore, this experience, I think, will be interesting for member states also to know. During the visit of Mr. Secretary General to Azerbaijan, he visited one of these centers. Youth and education is our priority as far as our policy, domestic policy, is concerned. Our society is young, very dynamic, educated. The level of literacy in Azerbaijan is close to 100%, and we clearly understand that only educated society can be a guarantee for successful development, can be a guarantee against radicalism, against fundamentalism. Therefore, education is one of the top priorities for our government, and during the last 10 years, more than 3,000 schools were built in Azerbaijan, and also the quality of education is improving. At the same time, we implement numerous programs in collaboration with the leading universities of the world, sending our young students to train so that we can have intellectual potential in line with our economic potential. These are basically the main priorities which will concentrate during our chairmanship. Our chairmanship is an important milestone in the history of our membership in the Council of Europe. Of course, this chairmanship is a chairmanship based on rotation principles. Therefore, it's just our turn has come, but at the same time, it will be a good chance for us to present our country and to address important issues also which create concern in different European countries, issues related to democracy, rule of law, and sometimes selective approach to situation in different countries. I think one of the issues which we'll definitely raise during our chairmanship is the situation of sometimes differentiated approach to situation in the countries of the same region. Therefore, refuse from the principles of double standards, I think, will be a great contribution if we succeed during our chairmanship in the Assembly. As far as the general development of our country is concerned, as I said before, country is young, but with great history, traditions, dynamic, with a very active foreign policy, and a country which plays a stabilizing role in the region, because the potential of Azerbaijan is growing, and our initiatives related to regional cooperation are supported by our neighbors, and today the neighborhood is growing, so initiatives which we launch now cover many more countries. We have a strong support from international community and very positive reputation in international institutions. Our biggest diplomatic success was when Azerbaijan was elected as a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council. As a young country which still needs to present itself to the world, that was the biggest achievement, and we are proud of that. And also we are proud of the fact that 155 countries supported our candidacy. So absolute majority of international community trusts Azerbaijan, supports Azerbaijan, and considers Azerbaijan as a reliable partner. And during 2 years of membership, twice we chaired the United Nations Security Council, and according to the overwhelming assessment, our chairmanship and membership was very successful. We largely contributed to peace, security, stability, predictability in the world. At the same time, membership in Security Council was a unique experience for our country, which of course we will use in the future initiatives. We established very constructive relations with the absolute majority of international community. Our bilateral ties with European countries are developing very successfully. Europe is our main trading partner, and historic links between Azerbaijan and Europe strengthened during the years of independence. At the same time, Azerbaijan, as a Muslim country, is an active member of Islamic Cooperation Organization, and I think we play a very important role as a not only geographic, but cultural and political bridge in our region. And the more successful we are, the more active role we can play in the interaction between civilizations. Actually, International Dialogue for Civilizations Forum sessions in Baku shows that Azerbaijan is one of the world's centers of multiculturalism, and the International Center for Multiculturalism will be created soon in our country. Among the problems which we are facing, the biggest problem is a violation of internationally recognized territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict is a conflict which puts under danger the whole region. It is called frozen, protracted conflict, but this conflict is neither frozen, nor it can be frozen, because the conflict must be resolved. Nagorno-Karabakh is a historic part of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijanis lived in Nagorno-Karabakh for centuries. Armenians were settled in that area less than 200 years ago. Historic monuments, our heritage in Nagorno-Karabakh, unfortunately, is now destroyed by Armenian occupational army. The conflict resulted in occupation of 20% of international recognized territory of Azerbaijan. We were the subject of ethnic cleansing by Armenian gangs and Armenian army. 1 million Azerbaijanis became refugees and internally displaced persons in Azerbaijan. And Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 districts around Nagorno-Karabakh are under occupation for more than 20 years. This is the biggest injustice because, as I said, Nagorno-Karabakh is a historic part of Azerbaijan. The word Karabakh is of Azerbaijani origin. All the geographic toponyms of that area belongs to our people. At the same time, from international law norms point of view, Nagorno-Karabakh is an integral part of Azerbaijan. The whole world recognizes Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. No one, including Armenia, recognizes illegal Nagorno-Karabakh regime as independent entity. United Nations Security Council, the highest international body of the world, adopted 4 resolutions demanding unconditional and immediate withdrawal of Armenian occupational forces from occupied territories. Unfortunately, as I said before, these resolutions are not implemented. And this is again the policy of double standards, because we see sometimes that resolutions of United Nations are being implemented within hours, And in our case, it's more than 20 years. And there's no mechanism. Armenia just doesn't want to liberate the territories. They don't want to leave occupied territories. They want to keep everything unchanged. They want to keep status quo unchanged. And this is in total contradiction with the efforts of international mediators, OSCE Minsk Group and its co-chairs, three countries, permanent members of United Nations Security Council, United States, Russia, and France. Their presidents a couple of times made a clear statement that status quo is not acceptable, and that means that Armenia should start withdrawal of its occupational forces from occupied territories. But they just ignore international law, they ignore statements of the leading countries of the world. They ignore resolution of Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, which was adopted in 2005. Corresponding resolution was adopted by European Parliament. Decisions of OSCE, all of them demand deoccupation, withdrawal of Armenian troops from occupied territories. But unfortunately, the conflict is not resolved. Azerbaijan behaves very constructively. For more than 20 years, we are committed to negotiation process. But everybody should understand, including Armenians, that this process cannot last forever. Sooner or later, something may happen. Therefore, the sooner Armenians' leadership recognizes that it is unacceptable to occupy the territory of other countries in the 21st century, the better for them. But unfortunately, we don't see the adequate approach from Armenian leadership. Previous Armenian president, speaking here in this home of democracy, said that there is a national incompatibility between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. His successor, the current leader of Armenia, describes the conflict as a religious one. This is absolutely unacceptable approach. First of all, Azerbaijanis don't have any incompatibility with any nation. Maybe Armenians have, but not only with us, because today this country is mono-ethnic. 99.9% of population of Armenia are Armenians. All the minorities, including Azerbaijanis, were forced to leave. Therefore, this racist approach cannot prevail in negotiations. We need to address this issue. We need to restore justice, restore territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Unfortunately, as a result of this occupation, our historic monuments are destroyed. Our mosques are leveled to ground. Our cemeteries are destroyed. And today, the occupied territories is land totally destroyed. OSCE sent twice missions, fact-finding and field assessment missions to the occupied territories, and their report clearly shows that everything is destroyed. This is a result of Armenian vandalism on the occupied territories. Territorial integrity is a basic principle of international law. Self-determination, which Armenian side always refers to, should not violate territorial integrity of the countries. Let Armenian leadership read the Helsinki Final Act carefully and see the clear definition. And plus, Armenians already self-determinated themselves. They have Armenian state, which actually was created on a historic Azerbaijani land. Maybe many of members of Assembly do not know, but Armenian delegation, of course, knows that one of the first decrees of Democratic Republic of Azerbaijan, which was created as a result of collapse of Russian Empire in 1918, was to give Yerevan as a capital for Armenian state. So they already have their state. How many Armenian states do they want? Do they want everywhere they live to create another state? Why should be another state in Azerbaijan? One is enough. Therefore, self-determination should not violate territorial integrity. Conflict must be resolved as soon as possible for the benefit of all of us, including Armenian people who suffer from today's Armenian government, which leads the country towards total collapse and catastrophe. Despite the conflict, Azerbaijan's economy is growing. Last 10 years, Azerbaijan was the fastest growing economy in the world. No other country increased economic potential as much as Azerbaijan. Our GDP grew 3.4 times. We managed to diversify the economy, and as a result of that, non-energy sector of our economy now is 55% of our GDP. All the international financial institutions highly value our reforms. During the years of financial crisis, main rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, upgraded Azerbaijan's credit rating. Davos World Economic Forum ranks Azerbaijan's economy number 39 in the Global Competitiveness Index. That means that we managed to transform economy from planned to market economy to maximum degree, at the same time to create a competitive economy. 1,200,000 jobs were created in Azerbaijan, and also fair distribution of national wealth is one of the main achievements of our country. As a result of that is the level of poverty, which dropped during the last 10 years from 49 to 5.3%. Unemployment is 5%. Budget deficit is in the limits accepted by European Union countries. Foreign debt is 8% of GDP. Financial situation is stable. Social programs are being implemented. Political situation is stable. Azerbaijan is, as I said before, is an active member of international community. Country is modernizing, and we look to the future with great optimism. I don't want to take much of the time which we have for interactions to leave time for questions, but as you can imagine, I can talk about our country for several hours. Don't want to use all the time for my presentation. Just want to say that chairing the Committee of Ministers is a big challenge, big responsibility. We are ready for that, and we will do our utmost to contribute to the common values of democracy, rule of law, and freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President, for your speech. Now I have a number of speakers who wanted to ask questions. I want to remind you that you have 30 seconds to ask your questions and not to make statements. We are going to have first the speakers on behalf of the political groups. First speaker, Mr. McNamara, on behalf of the Socialist Group. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President and Mr. President. Amnesty International states there are 19 prisoners of conscience in your jails. Others say more. The court here has said that the pre-trial detention of one, Ilgar Mammadov, was unlawful and motivated by electoral considerations. Another, Anar Mammadli, exposed flaws in the recent presidential elections which you won. NIDA activists were jailed for merely expressing an opinion and calling for peaceful demonstration. This body has adopted a definition of political prisoners, but the rapporteur was denied access to Azerbaijan. Do you feel that all of this diminishes your legitimacy to chair this body, and will you release those prisoners?
Thank you. President. I kindly want to remind people who are assisting our meeting of today, and I thank you for coming, not to applaud. Thank you very much.
First of all, I'd like to say that there are no political prisoners in Azerbaijan. All what you said is based on false information, either on your biased approach to our country. It's not for the first time you are trying to insult Azerbaijan, but without any visible success. And I'm sure that your yesterday's initiative will have the same outcome as the initiative which we had a couple of years ago, resulted in fiasco of Mr. Strasser here in January 2013. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan is a subject of a deliberate provocations. We know the source, we know the reason. It has nothing to do with human rights and democracy. It's geopolitical. And probably the question which you read from the paper was given to you by someone who is interested in attacking Azerbaijan. What?
I write my own speeches and questions,
yeah,
Mr.
I understand.
President.
I understand. If you want to open discussion, we can find another place for that. Therefore, there are no political prisoners in Azerbaijan, and the report of Mr. Strasser failed here in this room because it was based on false information. It was based on slander, on rumors. And you're trying now to do the same. You're trying to mislead the opinion of the Assembly by repeating this false information. There are no political prisoners. And Azerbaijan is a member of European Court of Human Rights. And all the issues related to prisoners can be addressed there. And we respect the decisions of European Court of Human Rights. Therefore, once again, I'd like to say that these attempts to attack our country are absolutely groundless, and they will have no result.
I now want to give the floor to Mrs. Bakoyannis on behalf of the EPP Group.
Let me welcome you, Mr. President, on behalf of the EPP Group. I would like to come back on the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. There have been many initiatives in the last years. The Minsk Group is active in the region, the OSCE, and I would like to know your opinion. Do you think that there is room for the Council of Europe to try to take an initiative on Nagorno-Karabakh? And how do you assess the situation in the last months? Do you think there might be a momentum which one could use?
We always strongly supported the addressing this issue here in the Council of Europe. That was from the very beginning of our membership. And as I said in my comments, 2005 Council of Europe adopted a resolution which clearly said about situation, occupation, and the necessity to put an end to occupation. Later, the ad hoc committee was created here, but due to the unconstructive behavior and actually boycotting by Armenian delegations, this committee now is not gathering. Therefore, the more international institutions pay attention to this issue, the sooner I think we can find a solution. Because Armenia wants to keep everything unchanged, as I said, and they want international community to forget about the conflict. Therefore, they think that the format of Minsk Group is the best for them. We understand today they cannot be alternative for mediation rather than Minsk Group, though they did not produce any results. But Council of Europe, I think, should address this issue more actively, and we think that the restoration of the activity of ad hoc committee would be the important step. As far as the negotiation prospects are concerned, unfortunately, we don't have much optimism. Armenians are trying to do everything in order to keep status quo unchanged. From time to time, we have bilateral meetings with Armenian president. Last time was last November in Vienna, which produced some optimism, and even we publicly elaborated on that. But again, the old tactics of making some minor step forward and then delaying the process is continuing. Therefore, without active involvement of international community, I think Armenia would try to continue with what they are doing so far.
Thank you. Next speaker, Earl of Dundee from the EDG Group.
Mr. President, on human rights improvement and reform, apart from the current agreed and public action plan with the Council of Europe, which particular measures will you and your country now adopt to achieve specific targets?
Mr. Secretary General, to Azerbaijan. It's a comprehensive document which actually is a roadmap for future cooperation between Azerbaijan and Council of Europe. And of course, situation with human rights, democratic reforms, rule of law is our priorities. As I said before, a lot has been done previously, but still a lot is to be done. And we are very open for criticism when this criticism is based on real facts. Of course, we are not perfect, as maybe any of other members of the Parliamentary Assembly. But sometimes the criticism is based on a biased approach. It's just on attempts to damage the reputation of Azerbaijan. Years of membership of Azerbaijan to the Council of Europe were the years of rapid political reforms. And that was the right choice for our government and the right choice for the Council of Europe to adopt us to its family. Therefore, the future collaboration, including the months of our chairmanship, I'm sure will produce new good results with respect to democratic reforms in our country.
Thank you. Next speaker on my list, Mr. Shukla, leader of the ALDE group.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Voy a hablar en mi lengua. Señor presidente, en el año 2006, la República de Azerbaiyán adoptó el Convenio del Consejo de Europa de lucha contra la corrupción. Esta es una materia muy sensible y nuestros estándares son muy claros y nuestro seguimiento también a través de Greco. ¿Qué medidas ha adoptado su gobierno para la implementación del convenio y qué nos puede decir sobre la ley de acceso a la información y a la transparencia de los fondos y las propiedades? Muchas gracias.
Thank you. As I said in my remarks, corruption is one of the main areas where we will concentrate as a chairman of the Council of Europe, because it's a disease that needs to be cured. And as I said before, our country, as our compatriots from the former Soviet Union, all of us, were in difficult situation because of deep-rooted corruption in our society. Therefore, elimination of this evil is one of the targets of our government. Without that, our success cannot be sustainable. Therefore, joining the convention and also using the positive experiences, especially in the countries of members of the European Union, this is also part of our cooperation with the European Union, are of extreme importance to our country. And as I said, institutional measures which we implement give much better results than administrative or measures of punishment. Because by changing the people, unfortunately, the issue cannot be resolved. Therefore, we found such a mechanism, and I said in my comments, the public services system, which just makes it impossible for corruption. And of course, transparency. I fully agree with what you said. We have good experience. Azerbaijan was one of the first countries which joined the initiative of then Prime Minister of UK, Mr. Blair, on extractive industries transparency initiative. And Azerbaijan became the first full member of this initiative. Therefore, transparency in extractive industries in Azerbaijan is provided 100%. Now we need to have the same percentage of transparency in our financial sector and in the sector of public services, and we are working on that.
Thank you. And now the last speaker on behalf of the political groups, Mr. Cox, the leader of the United Left.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your most interesting speech, in which you gave quite a positive analysis of your country's human rights track record. But not everybody, however, as you are aware, agrees with this kind of positive analysis. I met with someone when I was in Baku. I will meet with others today. And this assembly will, of course, look after it in next January. In this respect, Mr. President, would you be prepared to consider to organize in your country a roundtable structure in which you could engage in a transparent dialogue with those who think Azerbaijan could and should substantially improve its human rights track record? And I'm sure that this assembly would be willing to assist you in organizing it if needed. I'm looking forward to your answer. Thank you very much.
Definitely, not only we are ready, but we are willing to organize such a session, and actually we address this issue during our interactions with our partners. During the visit of Madam President and Mr. Secretary General last May, we had a very substantive discussions on that. Though we disagree on some issues, but at the same time we have a constructive dialogue. And as I said previously, we do not consider that situation in Azerbaijan with respect to human rights and democracy is perfect, but there is a great progress. And we are ready to react, and we do react, to a constructive criticism. I concentrated in my comments on a positive example of our reforms just because in this audience, usually you concentrate on negative. Therefore, in order to create the slightest balance in a session, I wanted to take my time, but I left some time for interaction. Therefore, I think it would be a good idea to have an open, sincere discussions on the substance. Because sometimes when we discuss this issue, what I hear from my partners and colleagues, there is a perception that, and there is a perception that. And who creates this perception? Sometimes perceptions are created artificially in order to damage the reputation of Azerbaijan. Therefore, let's look to the substance. With respect to freedoms, I said in my comments, we have freedom of media, free internet. How can we restrict media freedom when we have free internet and no censorship and 70% are internet users? After the last presidential elections in October, and before, there were rallies of opposition and no restrictions. And today, if anyone wants to have a rally in 3 days' time with the proper notifications, they will have a place in the center of Azerbaijan. The other thing is that at the last rally of opposition after elections, only 840 people came. So there were 840 people who did not, approve the presidential elections. But the fact that opposition is weak in Azerbaijan does not mean that we do something harmful. What I said about economic and social development cannot be ignored. Anyone who comes to Azerbaijan and sees this development can understand that such an enormous economic growth cannot be ignored by our society. Therefore, people support what we are doing. They support our government. Our government is strong, but not because we suppress someone, but just because we do things properly. Another thing, those who are in opposition today, the people who were in government in 92, 93, they created chaos. They are responsible for occupation, for loss of territories. They provoked the civil war, and then they run away. And some of the young generation of this group is sitting just on the balcony. These people, they do not understand. They did not know what happened in 93 and 92. And it's not their fault. They are just misled. Therefore, we are ready to engage in this kind of round table discussion with your participation.
Thank you. And now I propose, Mr. President, that we are going to have a group of 3 questions that you can answer then together. The first speaker is Mrs. Christoffersen from Norway.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. President, to this Assembly, the fight against the numerous violations of LGBT rights all over Europe has a high priority. Do you recognize LGBT rights as a part of fundamental human rights? And if yes, what will the Republic of Azerbaijan do to secure LGBT rights and their freedom to organize in your own country? Thank you.
Thank you. Next question from Mr. Rochebloine, France.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Monsieur le Président, Estimez-vous que les sévices arbitraires infligés à Mme Leyla Younes, éminente personnalité engagée dans la défense des droits de l'homme en Azerbaïdjan, sont de nature à convaincre l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe de la capacité de l'Azerbaïdjan à respecter les libertés fondamentales internationalement reconnues et consacrées notamment par la Convention européenne des droits de l'homme? Je vous remercie.
And then I ask Mrs. Fiala to ask her question.
Mr. President, the number of violent incidents at the international border has significantly increased in the recent times. Almost every day we read of casualties and injuries, civilians among them. Do you agree, Mr. President, if we encourage the parties to strictly adhere to the ceasefire and to implement the security measures proposed by the Minsk co-chairs as soon as possible? Withdrawal of snipers, independent investigations of incidents. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
All the rights of all groups of people are provided in Azerbaijan. There are no restrictions. Situation with freedoms, as I said, does not differ from situation which exists in your country. With respect to so-called mistreatment of Leyla Yunus, I can disagree with this statement because there was no mistreatment. There was probably mistreatment from her behalf towards a policeman who was actually verbally and physically attacked by her. She was trying to escape when she was asked to give evidence to one of the cases related to some criminal investigation, and she was stopped and invited to give evidence as a witness, but unfortunately she refuses for several weeks and actually ignores the legitimate request just to present her information if she has any. On incidents on the border, you raise the issue which always I hear from the Minsk group co-chairs about security measures and confidence building measures. I can tell you that sometimes the distance between Armenian and Azerbaijani soldiers is 50 meters. So you don't need to have a sniper there to do something harmful. The best way to establish a confidence building measures is to start withdrawal of occupational Armenian troops from Azerbaijani territories. These casualties which you refer to, they happen in the territory of Azerbaijan. They don't happen even in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is also territory of Azerbaijan. They happen in the occupied territories. What Armenian soldiers are doing there? Most of the soldiers are recruited from Armenia. What are they doing there on the occupied territories? Therefore, removal of forces is not acceptable. How can we protect then our land from additional attempts to attack us? Therefore, the sooner Armenian leadership realizes that their policy with respect to Nagorno-Karabakh failed, they actually lost the battle with Azerbaijan. Today, the level of poverty in Armenia is more than 40%, according to their statistics. According to their statistics, only first quarter of this year, 40,000 citizens of Armenia left Armenia forever, and they will never come back. That's a result of the occupational policy. And now they complain everywhere that Azerbaijan is possessing a threat. We are the country with occupied territories. They possess threat to us, to the whole region. So the sooner they realize that there is no future for this policy, never Azerbaijan will agree to independence of Nagorno-Karabakh, the sooner conflict will be resolved, and the sooner Armenian people will start a better life.
Thank you. Now we will have the next three questions. First, Mr. Flynn from the United Kingdom.
Journalists have been falsely accused and imprisoned in Azerbaijan. Elections have been rigged. I've spoken to the people involved. Can we look forward to a year in which Azerbaijan raises its standards to Council of Europe levels, Or can we look forward to a year in which the deplorable example of Azerbaijan will encourage other nations to degrade their own human rights standards?
Then Mr. Díaz-Tercera.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias, Presidente.
And thank you, Mr. President.
En la zona geográfica en que está su país, Azerbaiyán, señor Presidente, hay otros muchos vecinos. Yo le pregunto cuáles son los riesgos energéticos y los riesgos de estabilidad política que tenemos en la ubicación geográfica en que se encuentra ahora su país, que garantiza para el conjunto de los valores occidentales papeles similares al que puede jugar Israel en Oriente Medio o Marruecos en el Magreb. Riesgos energéticos y riesgos de estabilidad política en el futuro inmediato, señor Presidente. Y gracias por su trabajo.
Energy risks and stability risks for the immediate future, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, and now I ask Mrs. Lachlan from Denmark.
Mr. President, you explained that all freedoms are respected in Azerbaijan. However, we know from international media that still a lot of many thousand people are still internally displaced. How are you actually dealing with this challenge?
Thank you, President.
With respect to the first question, in your short question, you managed to lie 2 times. First of all, yeah, you were lying 2 times, and I will prove it. And now listen to me. Now listen to me. Journalists are not accused in Azerbaijan. No one since 2009 is in prison in Azerbaijan because of defamation. No one. This is first. Second lie is elections are rigged. Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly sent delegation to observe elections. Probably you are not aware about the report. If you are not aware, you check with your colleagues that they assessed positively elections in Azerbaijan. There were more than 1,000 international observers. There were several exit polls held by international organizations. All of them supported the official results, so their assessment did not differ. Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly sent delegation, report was positive and was approved here. European Parliament sent delegation, report was positive. Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE also had delegation, also was positive result. Why are you lying here? Elections were free, fair, and these institutions proved that. That probably happens in your country. On the issue with respect to energy security, Azerbaijan is playing its role as a country which contributes to energy security. Today, I did not raise this issue because I wanted to have more time for discussions, but energy security is something which we treat very seriously. Actually, we already achieved the full level of energy security for Azerbaijan because we have a diversified supply routes for our oil and gas, and we are now working to help some European countries to provide their energy security. And today, some of countries, members of Parliamentary Assembly, get about 40% of their oil from Azerbaijan. And now we launch the huge gas distribution and transportation project, which will allow Azerbaijan to be a gas exporter to Europe. And as you correctly mentioned in your question, energy security and political security and stability are things which must be addressed in a package. Therefore, implementation of the new gas infrastructure project, which will be the biggest infrastructure project in Europe implemented now, with total investments at least 45 billion euros, will be the biggest contribution Azerbaijan will make to the energy security of Europe. And on the last question from Denmark, you touched upon the internally displaced. If I understand correctly, you mean the persons who suffered from Armenian occupation. Is that what you meant or not?
Many. There are many kinds of displaced people in.
we have a total number of refugees and internally displaced, more than a million, 250,000 Azerbaijanis who were expelled from Armenia, 700,000 Azerbaijanis were expelled from Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 districts of Azerbaijan, and we also had refugees who suffered from wars in other countries and came to Azerbaijan. We are trying to do our best to improve living standards of these people, but as you can understand, it takes a lot of time and funds. Every year, we resettle more than 20,000 IDPs. We build 82 settlements, and 40,000 families are provided already with flats and houses. But in order to satisfy the needs of all of them, we will need, of course, additional time and additional money.
Thank you. Mr. President, would you agree to take 3 other questions, even if usually we close at 1, but I think with your permission we will have 3 other questions. So the first one is Mr. Japaridze from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. President, I wish Azerbaijan successful and productive chairmanship. You talked about conflicts, and Georgia, as you know, is plagued with the same kind of problems. But you talked also about economic developments, and I'd like to pose a question regarding regional cooperation. Because Azerbaijan is one of the driving forces along Turkey, Georgia, regarding these projects. So thank you very much.
The next question from Mr. Biedron, Poland.
Thank you, President. I was so strongly surprised of your male-only delegation that for the sake of equality of men and women, I must ask this question to you, Mr. President. Azerbaijan is on the Global Gender Gap Index 99th out of 136 countries in the world. So it's a terrible position concerning gender equality. I want to ask you what your government does to fully implement equality of men and women, and when you will sign and ratify Istanbul Convention. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question from Mr. Aliev from Ukraine.
Mr. President, first, your opinion about reinforcement of Guam organization, because all 4 members of this organization suffered territorially from or with help of Russian invasion. And second, Azerbaijan, as the President of Azerbaijan, as a country which is chairman in Council of Europe now, we have our colleague Mustafa Dzhemilov, leader of Crimea Tatars, who cannot come back to his home in Crimea because of Russia ban. Could you provide to assist him to back home to Crimea? Thank you.
On the issue raised by Mr. Japaridze, I can say that trilateral cooperation on energy and now on transportation between Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan already resulted in a very serious geopolitical change in our region, because our 3 countries recently had the first ever summit on the level of heads of states in Tbilisi last month. And political, economic, energy cooperation between these 3 countries important is not only for us, but also for the region, because together we play a stabilizing role, especially with respect to issues related to energy security. And the first geopolitical change was the construction of the oil pipeline Baku-Tbilisi-Jihan, which connected Caspian with Mediterranean for the first time. And now we're implementing another project which is called TANAP, Trans-Anatolian Pipeline, South Caucasus Gas Pipeline, and TAP, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, which from Baku through Georgia, Turkey, Greece, Albania, Italy, Bulgaria will cover many other countries. We implement also the very important railroad project, which is called Baku-Tbilisi-Kars, and that will be a railroad which will connect Asia and Europe through our countries. And of course, stability in our countries is the main prerequisite for successful development option in the region. Therefore, we highly value our bilateral relations with Georgia and also with Turkey, and will continue actively to develop this cooperation. It's strange to hear that Azerbaijan is accused because of gender inequality. Our country is a country with great traditions. And when the first Democratic Republic of Azerbaijan was established in 1918, one of the first decrees was to give a right for women to vote. It was much earlier than probably in your country. And today, women in Azerbaijan enjoy the same rights and privileges. They participate actively in political life. I don't want you to consider only these men as members of our delegation. We have representatives from Azerbaijan, our prominent women parliamentarians here in this room. They can show themselves, probably you know that. And there is no restrictions, and actually we never looked at this issue from point of view of how many women or how many men I have in my team, because they're equal and they enjoy equal rights. As far as gender equality is concerned, probably you know that Azerbaijan already adopted a law on gender equality and also family code, and we are now reviewing the Istanbul Convention, and we don't have any objections against that. And when you visit Baku, or if you visit Baku, you will see yourself that women enjoy the same rights, and you know, we are very glad about that. And on Guam, I can tell you that Guam's activity or passiveness largely depended on Ukrainians' position, because during my experience in this format of cooperation, already several times we had Ukrainian government very pro-Guam and very anti-Guam. Therefore, it's very difficult for us, and I'm sure our Georgian and Moldavian colleagues, to plan a long-term strategy of development of this organization, because activization or deactivization largely depended previously on political structure of your government. Therefore, we will wait for positive signals from Ukraine in order for Guam again to become active as it was before.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President, for your speech and also for the answers to the questions of my colleagues.
I know.